go. We'll call the select board meeting of Tuesday, July 9th to order, and the first item is approval of the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any amendments to the agenda? None, all in favor of approving the agenda as drafted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next is approval of the consent agenda.
I move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments on the consent agenda?
There's a very tiny correction on the minutes, line 152. This reads, Sealy informed the board that there would not be an infrastructure committee in July. It should be meeting added to that, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a correction on line 182 also. I think it's got PFAS and it should be PAS.
No,
Nope.
it should be.
It's
PFAS.
PFAS.
Yeah.
Okay. There was two PFASs in one sentence.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh.
they
She said they
did
don't
PFAS
have much.
bill. You're right.
They did PFAS bill that bans it.
They
Maybe.
did pass the PFAS bill, but they have, yeah, I think there should be a pass in it. I think you're right, Dan.
First time in 4.5 years I've gotten one. I might even be a bold knight. I might even second something tonight.
Plus 2 typo points for you.
Yeah.
Give him a chance.
Anything else?
Getting comfortable here.
I would just like to point out the award for the water tank system from the
Yahoo.
NBRC. That will help us get that project moving forward, so.
Huge.
All right. Before we vote, I just have to call attention, Heather is gonna feel really good as she does later on, step down and not run again, that you've got somebody who's reading those minutes as you always have done, so.
Be fraud.
Passing the torch to Farhad lately.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, citizen comments. Laura, you don't know in here, is there anything that's not on the agenda?
I just wanted to remind the board, hi, Laura, that we do have a Public Health and Safety Committee meeting coming up on July 22nd. So we meet quarterly, just to remind you, and that the composition of that is really like this, kind of like, it's really powerful because it's got stakeholders from all the emergency service providers. So we'll be welcoming the new Porter Medical Center emergency provider to that meeting. And of course, we have the college, and now we have the school. We have a representative from the supervisory union, and of course, all the rest of you that you know. So Andy and Dan are on that committee. And we are starting to build that agenda, and of course, we're advisory to you. So if there's anything that you want us to take up, you know, you have a little time. We're starting to build that agenda now. We just have our checklist items of usual ongoing issues, which is like monitoring the downtown and traffic calming and safety measures and how things are going related to that. And of course, response to conditions, extreme climate conditions, like extreme heat or rain, you know, and those kinds of things. And so far, it seems so good, you know, like in terms of responding to extreme heat and rain events, weather events, like the measures that we took in response to last year's flooding seem to be working, and we continue to work on those stormwater improvements that we know are more important than ever. So I just wanted to remind you, and I'm here tonight to also listen to a lot of the other items on your agenda that are policy related that might relate to the committee as well.
Great. Thanks, Laura. Anybody out there with their hands up?
There aren't any attendance tonight.
Wow. Okay.
We're at the festival on the green.
That's right.
Where we should be.
Yeah.
Chief Shaw.
Come to you with a request. Our elevator at Station 1 has given us troubles and is in need of repair. It has to have the seals removed from both shafts and the check valves removed from both shafts. So they have to totally tear the elevator shaft assembly all apart and rebuild that. And then they're going to scrub the oil and reinstall the oil. It's a 3-day process, and it's expensive. $10,218 to tear it apart and repair it, and then we have to do the mandatory 5-year load test, and that's $2,600. The scrubber, I beat him up on the scrubbing charge. That was $3,500. I told him there was absolutely no way we were going to pay $3,500 for a scrubber, so we didn't. And I got them down another $1,600 on the annual service. But what happens is the car doesn't come down even. It comes down and it wrenches itself and locks itself up and puts itself out of service because the valves that release the oil one is partially plugged and the other one is totally free, so it doesn't allow the same amount of oil to go in each cylinder at the exact same time. We did a seal job on the elevator in 2017, so it's been a while. It shouldn't be from overuse. I mean, we use it when we're there, but that may be one of the problems, that it doesn't get used enough, so.
I'll ask you, as those seem to
Yeah,
stay,
yeah.
seals seem to stay.
We have a signed contract with Bay State Elevator, which was bought out by Otis Elevator, and the last time we had this service done, or part of this service done, it was inclusive in the maintenance contract. We don't have a maintenance contract with Bay State anymore because they're out of business. Otis Elevator assumed that, but we don't have a contract with them. And it would be in our best interest to sign a contract with them and understand what we're getting into, because
Would there be a substantial saving if you sign that contract, you think?
I would suspect probably not, but at least we would know what our charges are going forward, right? We would know. One would assume there could be a cost savings, but I wouldn't guarantee that. So I'm looking for the ability to expend $12,600.
I'll move to approve the purchase order request from the Middlebury Fire Department with Otis Elevator Company for the replacement of the elevator check valves and packing. My computer just quit. And as well as state-required hydraulic rupture valve testing for approximately
$12,898.68.
that amount.
Second.
Or is there more that you're gonna need?
I hope not. No, we won't pay them any more. If we need more, we'll have to do it for free.
Very good.
Any questions? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, chief, thanks.
Thank you.
Dave?
Moving right along.
3 minutes ahead of schedule.
Trying to keep it that way.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so, back with a little more detail about downtown parking. This is the, I think, third chat we've had about this. This came from your retreat, as well as from some recommendations the town received quite a while ago. I think 2012 the study came out. So, in conversations with Public Works and with police and with you guys, we dug a little deeper into what some of those recommendations might be and whether there might be any interest in advancing any of them. Two of them we zeroed in on initially. One of them, and you can see in front of you, one of them has to do with the fines. I think we gave you some research a couple meetings back that showed that Middlebury's fines are just very, very low. And we're not trying to make money off this, but fines are designed to create some disincentive and encourage you to follow the rules. Right now, Middlebury charges lower than basically every other town in top 20 in Vermont. We charge $5. Here, see? $5. So not the greatest disincentive. So we have a recommendation there that's just set basically at the median. You're free to increase that, decrease that, that's really up to you, but trying to show you what the median might look like. I will say that some quite a few towns tend to triage their fines based on severity. You know, there's a couple parking issues that really are more about safety and not about supporting the businesses, you know, handicap spots, fire hydrants, things like that. So that's item number one. Number two is, you know, the town has a limited amount of public parking. As you know, there's a great deal of popularity with this Bakery Lane lot. That study showed that. Since the basic premise of parking rules are trying to help your downtown businesses and encourage customers to turn over in the spots, one of the recommendations that you see before you is to set aside a percentage of the spots in the lower lot down here towards timed parking. So the whole lot would no longer just be all-day parking, which is practically speaking what it is now. What that means is you'll have more spots in this popular location to service some of the businesses, and to be clear, it will displace some of a small percentage of the all-day parkers, of which may include some town staff and me. But that'll also encourage, interestingly, use of other lots that you have, like Mill Street, that typically go very underutilized. And having more people there actually can help the perception of it being a place people don't want to park. It's sort of a catch-22 there. So those are the two initial recommendations having to do with parking. I wanted to present them again and let you digest it. We've sent this out initially to the members of DIDC. So if we get any feedback, we'll let you know. If you're interested in proceeding, we'd obviously have to warn an ordinance change. You can see a draft version in front of you, but we'd have to go through the formal process of amending the parking ordinance and have a public hearing 30 days. Yeah. So that's the gist of what this is. It's a couple of the recommendations from the report. Some of the others we can discuss down the road, but these are two fairly small but meaningful recommendations that I think will make it a little more of an efficient parking system.
David, when did you circulate to the DIDC?
Friday, Thursday or Friday, I think we shot that out. And I don't think I got any responses. We got one email from one gentleman.
Right,
I don't know if he's on that list, but.
David.
David Silburn, it was in your packet suggesting the waiver.
Yeah, he was piggybacking off something Woodstock, Vermont does, which is essentially if you get a parking ticket, they have paid parking in Woodstock on the street. So if you get a ticket for that, you go to a business, and if the business stamps your ticket, you don't have to pay the fine.
You probably go and spend money, so.
The idea is, in theory, the one thing I would say ironically is that could mean I could park my car all day and get it stamped for buying a burger across the street and then leave my car there all day.
Right.
It kind of goes in a different direction if you're trying to encourage more turnover. So that was one idea, but I don't think we have received any other feedback one way or the other yet.
They gotta send a receipt in, so maybe it would be a.
They would send a receipt to the police department.
Purchase
Yeah, purchase of something,
of volume, but I mean.
but then you're setting a number or,
20 bucks.
yeah.
$20, you get an hour of parking. Okay, so we got some ideas.
So, yeah.
Questions from the board?
Going through the ordinance,
Yeah.
I opened Google Maps because I don't even know, there's 50% of the streets I've never heard of. So I'll drive around now and take a look at them. You two are probably the only two in the town that know them all. But anyways, I saw a typo, at least it disagrees with Google Maps.
Uh-oh.
It's 2 times. Willow Drive, it's, in here it says Willow Street. Point that one out on a map, everybody. That's way up there.
It's where Pete's Auto is.
But
Rouse.
it's near the bottom. It says Willow, it's not Willow Street, it's Willow Drive.
It used to be Willow Tree.
Used to be what?
There used to be a willow tree there when
Okay.
Rouse Tire was. Anyway, you finished? Sorry.
Sure.
I think it's too bad that our charter has such a long time to enact an ordinance. This isn't going to take effect this summer, you know, given the time it takes to do something. But anyway, I prefer ordinance amendments that have the strike-through, so you can see what's changed when you do it. And I talked with Dave about that earlier. It's not a big thing. Secondly, I'm with Heather in terms of what she expressed last meeting, that the fines for parking in handicap spaces or in front of fire hydrants ought to be way more, like $100 and $50 for a crosswalk and $25 for the other stuff. This is my personal opinion on it. I do believe there ought to be a colored map that shows not just the names of the parking lots around, but the times, so that something that could be posted on a website so that people planning to visit Middlebury and planning to do something don't have to hunt around and find out what the signs say, for how long they can park, and to make a little clearer other information that, for example, if you want to go to dinner across the street and a movie downtown, the 3-hour limit isn't going to apply to you, if that's in fact what our ordinance is saying. Things like
3-hour
that
limit
would
at
help
night?
people plan their visits
No.
to Middlebury and be more visitor-friendly.
So to both your points, that section of the parking ordinance doesn't apply in the evenings. I think it's 7 to 6 or 6 to 7, so it wouldn't be, the 3-hour parking is, yes, 7 AM to 6 PM, Monday to Saturday, so it wouldn't be in effect anyway, for the dinner time and the Sundays.
Yeah, and it's great that you're reaching out to the DIDC. You might reach out to them in the format of things, the colored map, and what would be something that they could use on their website to make it easier for people who really don't like reading parking ordinances to figure out what they ought to do when they're planning to visit in town. I think there's other things that, when you read this, of course, you want to change every place it says selectmen to select board, and you can think of other things that we ought to do, address the residential use of parking spaces by people who want to bring their camper vans and things like that. Dave told me that Jason has some other ideas about a longer term look over of this. And I don't want to slow down anything, even as bad as it is. It's going to take us to the fall to enact this. Anyway, those are my thoughts on it. I'm ready to make a motion to warn things once we come to concurrence on
I have a question
Yeah.
going off. I assume you all spoke to tiered fines with higher fines, like,
Yeah, I mean, that was initially, I had presented that to you. I think there
Yep.
was some more discussion with staff, and so now you see a flat rate across the board. I will say most towns do tiered,
Right.
most towns, and like I said, the safety issues tend to you get charged more, because blocking a hydrant is gonna cause a greater harm than double parking.
Right.
So, all things being equal. So, if you wanna move in that direction, that's ultimately a decision for you about what you feel is the right amount. But yeah, most towns do charge more for those handful of safety-related ones.
I could be persuaded if Jason, if you could tell me that whether some different structure works better with enforcement or not, in terms of the fee structure, or we want it to work.
You mean as far as tiered fines,
Yeah.
violation, increasing fines? The problem I have with that, I don't have a problem with the idea of it, is our capacity to do that. We do not have a software system that would support that. That would require an investment by the town, that we do not have a computerized system. Right now, our tickets, we used to, many years ago, a rudimentary one, now this is being tracked on an Excel spreadsheet. So that's
Sorry.
very, very challenging to manage that. There are systems out there, but you pay for them. And for our seasonal enforcement that we do, that's going to potentially be an expensive proposition if it is. There's a lot that goes into this when we talk about, what do we do about non-payment of funds?
Yeah.
For example. And I spoke to David, I support the idea of raising the fines. To pursue non-payment of a $5 parking ticket, the town employee that sends the letter, we spent more on that person handling that task than the unpaid parking ticket is worth. And this isn't about revenue generation, of course, this is about changing behavior. But the tier systems, I want to look and see what other municipalities use. Do they have full-time parking enforcement? How do they manage
So it's easier for you if everything is the same, then you don't have to track as much.
It would, because right now, this would require the person doing parking enforcement to check with dispatch. Dispatch would open an Excel spreadsheet and would see how many tickets and search for a registration number. That's probably gonna be quite tedious, quite quickly.
And right now, we're charging 5 for everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, it brings us up
We're talking
right in the
about
middle.
trying to push behaviors without having a bunch of irate people within the community. Maybe trying the $25, which is 5-fold increase, but
Yeah.
probably more in line with what's a reasonable ticket.
What's out there, yeah.
The vast majority of our parking tickets are time violations. They are not,
Yeah.
fire lane, fire hydrant, accessible parking. That's not what we're issuing for. It's definitely.
The chief had mentioned going to a notice of winter ban, just reading through this whole parking thing. That's a piece of it, and going to a notice system
Yep.
rather than a default ban during those 5 months. Is that something that we can incorporate into the changes now, or is that a separate?
I think, I don't want to speak for Chief too much, but I think when we've talked about that, there's a bit of a logistical component to that. I think we would need, it's not just, I mean, eventually it comes to an ordinance change, but the other towns that do that, Winooski does that, Burlington does that, they do, in lieu of just get off the streets, it's November 1st, or, you know, they do usually a combination of media releases and text messages, which we now have, and some of them actually use blue lights, some sort of flashing symbol to remind people as they're driving by that it's that night when you've got to not. So there would have to be a bit of a logistical conversation, and there'd be a cost if there was some infrastructure lighting. That would eventually lead to an ordinance change, but I don't think we could do that right now.
Not ready for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's a couple communities that have moved away from just banning parking for 5 months.
Any other questions?
Just a quick comment. I did like the Woodstock idea, but I did have questions about how to implement it in restrictions around, like, the amount of the purchase.
And I spoke
And-
to the manager yesterday, and just after hearing the email, or seeing the email, and he clarified, you know, first off, it's only for one kind of violation, it's for your time's expired that you
Okay.
paid for. And it's even more broad than the constituent suggested. You don't actually have to buy anything, you just have to get a stamp that you went into a shop in Woodstock.
Okay.
And he also noted that, in anecdotal conversations with their downtown community, they haven't seen a lot of value in it. So, for whatever that's
It's staying-
anecdotally worth.
Yep.
Yeah, take that for what it is. So it sounds like that may be changing down there, or at least.
Okay, that's
moving
helpful
away
to
from
have
it,
more
yeah.
information. I was thinking, so what is it, somebody gets a parking ticket and then 30 days later, they go downtown and spend some money and can put the receipt up? I just had
I
questions
mean,
about like how it
my
worked.
initial reaction was just, if the idea is to create more turnover in spots, that concept would seem to encourage people to stay in their spots
Yeah.
longer. I've been here for 3 hours, but I'm eating dinner at the restaurant, so I'll just stay an extra 3 hours, and I've got my little receipt here, so I'll be fine.
Yeah, if I stay an extra 3 hours and put 2 receipts in there, am I good, so,
Get a refund back.
okay,
Yep.
thank you for that information.
You said something about that being a big jump from 5 to 25. I tend to agree with that. I don't know what the chief will think about that. There's already a lot of discussion on the front porch forum about us trying to charge people with parking, and I think that's excessive,
The 25?
from 5 to 25. That,
Yeah, but 5 was ridiculous.
I know, it was, but I don't know if there's a way we can.
I want it to be 50.
One thing that I suggested is that if you overstay, your first ticket is smaller, and if you're there 2 hours later, you get a second ticket that's more. It sounds like that's difficult, maybe, with our system, but
That's kind of like a tiered.
it's not quite, it's not about your history, it's about whether there's still a ticket on your windshield 2 hours later. So you could do like a 10 and then a 20, like, sorry, you're 4 hours and only 15 minutes instead of
You guys are too nice.
30. Well,
The fire hydrant and the handicap spots, you can go $100,
yeah,
that's a violation that you cannot be put in,
Right.
right?
yeah.
But for parking lot,
So, just
Yeah.
question on process here. If we posted at 25, and we have the hearing and everything, and we decide, well, we're gonna go with 20, do we have to repost that, or are we okay to go forward with it?
I think you could go forward with that.
Okay, so we could post it at 25, and then see
case by
what the
case.
general consensus is, especially of downtown merchants who are the ones who are gonna be impacted the greatest.
Positively or negatively, yeah.
So,
Yeah, now they won't park on the street with 25, because they would park on the street for 5,
Right.
and do.
and do. They've admitted it.
So, and we've been dealing with this for a lot of years. I think we have a pretty good stab at a way to at least turn over our parking spaces. Maybe it's time to warn it and see what people, what the public thinks.
And like I said last time, you're gonna have the displacement anyway with the library project. You're gonna be temporarily knocking out quite a few spots back here. There's just no way they're gonna be usable when you're doing the library project. So you're gonna experience the pain of that culture change anyway. People are gonna get displaced down to Mill Street or wherever they go. So it's actually an opportunity to embrace the policy change that you're gonna experience practically one way or another next year.
I would move that we warn for hearing the proposed parking ordinance changes highlighted in yellow in your submission.
Second.
Any final comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of warning the parking ordinance, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Alrighty,
thanks, David.
let me jump into number 7, or no?
Well, if you
Yours
can
is-
sit right there.
Yeah, I'll hang on.
We're gonna just have, some more discussion about the concept of the page, or section of a page, yeah, it's independent. I did receive a note from Angelo, and he had received the notices, or the letter from somebody saying that would be, the Middlebury and would receive preferential treatment, and they may not be, critical of something that we do as a town governance, and give us a pass or something. I don't feel like they ever do give us a pass, but, he, mindful of that critique, a thought that he shared was if we could just commit to posting, the stuff that is good for the public and see what that brings. I really liked our discussion about having a town section where people would go to, and I would love to just see what people thought of it and trial it, still at this point, just because I think having a Middlebury section where all the formal notices are posted and agenda, the Selectboard and that type of stuff, it brings attention for Middlebury citizens to know, they can go right to that page. It's kind of like, what's the first page? A lot of people go to the obituaries. There's the second page that go to is Middlebury Town News. So, it's just a thought. So I throw it out for discussion.
I agree with the way you framed it at the retreat, that let's proceed with a policy that this is not a gift or a subsidy to the Addison. We're paying for coverage that we think as a select board is important that would fall between what their news articles would cover and what our minimum legal notice requirements would be. So the workup page looks nice, you know, when you stand it from afar, but the ipsum lopsum stuff, I think taking some of the or information that is available now that we get or that the committees have, which would be useful, such as what's the status of the town plan update? What's the energy committee's adopted priorities and projects for the year? What's the construction schedule for the paving, you know, that's going to happen this year? The kinds of things that Emily does a good job of writing in her notes to the infrastructure committee. And we do this not every newspaper. We, you know, like this summer, the beginning of the construction season will be a good time. Or if there's a good time in the process of the town plan update to have an article about that thing. It doesn't necessarily need a full page either. We pay by the column inch. And I think that's the way to go to move forward on this. And I had some correspondence with John Frieden about this, and I'm aware of his concern about it. I don't think his concerns about this changing the way the Addison Independent treats the town of Middlebury are founded. I think they're going to cover things, and John Flowers is going to still do the articles that he needs to do about issues that are controversial and important that they decide in their own discretion are newsworthy. So that's what I'd like to see as the next step, is to fill in the ipsum lopsum articles with some meat here, and then I think the staff, you know, we already pay for inserts for the recreation, you know, the seasonal activity thing, so this is nothing new. We pay for things that we think are important as a town, as information for our constituents.
But didn't we agree that we're going to do a trial with them once a month?
There's
something-
some discussion, I wasn't here for that meeting, but
No, at the retreat, we,
we did, but
Yeah.
then there was a follow-up discussion, I don't think there was a formal agreement to move forward with that.
should we still go that route and try it out and
That
see?
was- I thought.
Yeah.
I agree with it. I think it's a great idea.
We decided, like, we thought about doing once a month for now and see how that looks. If it's very positive, then I'll go for it afterwards.
Will it move our public notices to a more prominent location in the paper so they're not buried in the back?
That's
Okay.
the idea.
Maybe. Be good.
So is impact on the budget? I mean, we're not gonna budget $60,000 for this, but we normally do about $11,000 or $12,000 with notices, so this is gonna cost more, which,
We did, and it may end up double or whatever.
right?
I don't think we're talking
No,
$60,000.
No.
No, there's money in the planning office budget. If they want to do an article and a survey about the town plan update, they've got money to do that in their budget. And if you put together the different departments that
Different
contribute this,
departments,
we can accommodate this without any burden.
I also think a trial will allow us to kind of get an idea of how it impacts the workload of staff who might be in charge of putting it together. So hearing them out and saying, you know, how long did it take you to put this together this month would be really beneficial for us to hear at the end.
and most of the stuff is already stuff they're creating anyway, so.
Yeah.
If you do
It's a
once a
different button
month
to push, I guess.
now, it's gonna be about $15,000 a month, for the year. 15,000, that's about 4,500 more than what we're spending as a trial. There's a small math error here. It says 65,500 minus the current 10,500. It should come to 55. They wrote down 50.
Well, is there an action we need to take, or Kathleen, do you feel they have enough
Like I have enough
feedback
to,
I don't think
get
every
going on a
article, draft
trial?
article needs to come back to the board. I think
No,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
It's her page, not our page. She owns the page.
Okay, we're gonna move on then
Yes.
to policy review
Yep.
committee. Dave?
So, I'm sorry, how long are we gonna trial it for?
Till we say we want to stop. or change.
I mean, like,
Well, it might be nice to do like a 3-month trial, and that way you would have a good time to assess that before we go into the budget season, so we can,
And I think we should get.
that's three times?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should get good feedback from the community when they see something like that
Yeah.
on the full page.
Sure.
People might say it's a good idea, and that will give us a lead.
Okay. So a 3-month trial, and I do like Izzy's idea of getting some feedback from staff on, the amount of workload it adds. Like, are we just, is staff just providing the content that we're already producing for meetings? There's no, like, additional, I don't know, anyway.
Would be, the idea was that it would be mostly that, and the artist independent would do the layout.
Okay.
We're not the graphic people doing the layout, they'll be responsible to try to make it eye-catching.
So
and maybe polish it a little bit for
Mhm.
publication. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would just like to hear from staff at the end of the 3 months on what the time commitment is to it.
Now what we can do.
Alrighty. So we had the log jam broke, I guess.
Wow, yeah.
So you see 3 here all at once. So you're familiar with all these. All these originally came up to you for you to sign off on the committee working on them. So I'll give a little summary, and then if Izzy or Andy, who are both on the committee, want to chime in as well. The first one you've seen before, the naming of public spaces. This came up initially from a member of the committee, and it led to a broader discussion about how we name things in this town, in town-owned public spaces. There has always seemed to be a fairly informal process that's worked, but I think there was a desire to have something that the select board can follow. So what you see in front of you is based on other towns. It's not from scratch. It's taken from examples from other communities who've already have something like this. It's basically a page long. I'll point out a couple things. You know, we obviously followed your recommendation and decreased, if it's going to be named after an individual, 5 years instead of 10. We made it clear in section 3F, this doesn't apply to some of the smaller plaques that are put around town on benches and trees. We're not trying to be bureaucratic about that. If a little plaque goes on a bench, that we're not asking to be run through this process. But in the case of a park, a building, a street, this would give you guidance on what to follow. We did note in here that there's an exemption when you're dealing with town fundraising campaigns, the library being an example. That was brought up by some of the members, and you know, a practical reality that when you're raising funds through naming rights, that it may be somebody who just moved here 6 months ago and wants to donate and doesn't have a long connection to the town, but they're wishing to donate anyway. You don't want to have to turn away the fundraising because it runs afoul of this. So that's more of a practical reality I think the committee came to. That's in here as well. It doesn't interfere with any historic registry properties that already have names. Beyond that, it's laid out pretty logically. There's a process. It ultimately comes to you for a decision after a comment period. And that's the gist of it. It's the same as last time. The biggest change is the 5-year reduction.
Questions, comments?
I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've gone over this a few times.
Yeah, indeed.
you're telling me.
I'll move to approve and adopt the draft policy for the naming, renaming of town public spaces.
Second.
Seconded. One more time, questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Version 7.
Yeah. Boom, no version 8. This next one came up in the aftermath of some discussion. This goes back to last summer and the parking lot and the issues that happened back there, which led to some discussions in your budget about funding for future public cameras, which led to a question by somebody about, okay, well, who decides where the cameras go and can they be removed? And there was nothing really written down. I think some of these policies are not so much about improving efficiency, but really having something that the town and the staff and the board are following, as opposed to an unwritten practice, which sometimes may not be the best way to operate in this day and age. Again, this is not from scratch. We took a look at a couple other towns in Vermont who have similar, very succinct, not too long policies. The highlights of this essentially are it creates a structure, so the police chief is at the top of it in terms of ensuring the security of the cameras. It makes it clear who's going to authorize whose access. So the officers and maybe one or two folks in this building, it makes it clear that the select board would be making the decisions about installation and removal. If the police department comes with a recommendation, it would have to be signed off on you guys by this group. It speaks about retention. It doesn't set a specific time period. We learned a lot about from the chief about our camera systems during this discussion. Essentially, if an incident happens, tell me if I'm wrong on this, you pull the film, but short of that, we have film for as long as our capacity allows, and then we keep cycling over it otherwise. And last, it language from every other statute had the same verbiage about how we're going to release it. It's going to be in accordance with the state laws on that matter. So I don't think the policy committee had as much input into this, since it's much more of a more technical than the first one. But nevertheless, I think it'll be helpful to have the town just have this in writing, and it's clear who's in charge of it. It's not going to make the chief run around to the library every day and fix cameras, but it gives some structure to who can sign off and who's accessing it.
Excuse me, section 5, retention of data, A, I think there's the word missing there. All recorded surveillance video data shall be retained for the time period.
Yep.
That sentence also just struck me as odd. And I just may need an explanation. But it seemed odd that we are keeping our data based on what the manufacturer is prescribing?
In almost every case, you can buy more storage.
Okay.
And so we will purchase what seems adequate without it being a specified amount of time.
And then when it's used up, it just
It's just
over.
recording over, right,
Okay.
like a very long gauge
Okay.
test tape.
Almost
You
all
just-
securitizations.
Yeah,
that's how they work.
that's right. One other thing of note in here is right up under purpose. We were talking about the difficulty of dealing with numerous vendors in this space and numerous contracts, and wanting to have some preference for standardizing and choosing one platform rather than going for the cheapest for each additional camera, and kind of commenting that it should be the goal to think about the management as well as the next purchase.
I'm glad you explained that, because I don't think I got that from that second
Yeah.
sentence. Okay, so just back to that, that makes a little more sense, and part of my note to myself was just understanding,
Yeah.
just an understanding,
What the intent
yeah, it just like,
we have it now in-
so the manufacturer of this says, we'll keep your data 2 weeks, and that manufacturer says, we'll keep it 2 days. I mean,
Yeah.
it just
I don't-
seems like we should have more say
I
in,
think we have to say when we
Capacity
sign the
of-
contract, tell me
Okay.
if I'm wrong here, but if we pay X amount of money and it gives us 30 days of retention, then our agreement gives us 30 days of retention.
Okay.
It was intended to avoid a situation where we pick a number, 60 days across the board, and all of a sudden, we now have to go back to every one of our agreements for all of our cameras in this building, the cameras in that building, and renegotiate them to meet a number you set. I think from the chief's explanation, generally, when an incident happens, the tapes get pulled pretty quickly. and saved separately. So it's
Okay.
it's unlikely that something's gonna happen and it gets erased without somebody grabbing the film before
Okay.
30 days go by.
Thank you.
Or whatever it is, yeah.
Thank you for explaining. I think I'm good. I just needed some more explanation.
I'll move to approve and adopt the draft policy for the oversight and operation of the town's public video surveillance systems.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments or questions?
Another excellent policy.
So says the chair.
So says the chair.
Yeah. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right. Sorry. So last one, we have, again, this came up through originally citizen comment. This came from, I think in the fall or the late fall or the winter. Somebody raised a question to the town. Well, there's a religious object on public property. How, why, right? This, obviously, as you can imagine, is more of a legal thing than a policy thing. So we ended up talking to an attorney who gave us some guidance. The VLCT also gave guidance. So this is not something that the policy committee picked apart and adjusted, because we recognize there's federal law, that case law that governs this. It's not really just up to what we want or wish. So it's fairly short. There's not a ton of meat on the bone here. It's essentially piggybacking off your public assemblage ordinance. And if a request were to come in to put something in that is of religious nature, we would also review this when reviewing that permit request for a public assemblage. It's again, highly based on the guidance of that attorney. And again, I think it's something good to have in writing, so that if you start getting these requests or multiple requests, the decision-making isn't just, well, we decided this on Monday and this on Friday, but rather, we have something we've reviewed and we're gonna stick to it, and we think it's on sound footing. Yeah.
I agree with the idea of having something in place. My issue goes with the definition of public assemblage and how it is constructed from a legal point of view. Public assemblage is under scope, third paragraph. Public assemblage is defined in the public assemblage ordinance as any parade, march, ceremony, show, exhibition, pageant, or procession of any kind, or any rally or demonstration or similar display in or upon a public place, which constitutes a public nuisance, or presents a clear and present danger of substantial injury or harm to persons or property, or an imminent threat to public health or safety. This is the jurisdictional threshold for where you can require a public assemblage permit. We require a public assemblage permit for Festival on the Green. It's not a public nuisance. It's not a threat or imminent danger or substantial injury or harm. You have 40 years of history. How can you require a permit for something that never has demonstrated that? It's a problem with constructing the definition with a performance base. And I think the other language that you looked up in another ordinance about public nuisances, that,
Yeah.
you know, where it occupies
Yeah.
the space to the exclusion of others.
That was the definition of nuisance.
Well,
That was the-
I would put that in here instead of, you know, this is just me reading it literally and wondering, so somebody challenged this
I
and
think,
said,
yeah.
you know, we're gonna put a menorah up or whatever and prove that that's a public nuisance.
I think the
Prove that it
phrasing,
causes imminent harm or danger or threat.
I think
And
nuisance
we'd
is
lose in a minute.
nuisance is a rough word, and I think it can lead you, it sounds harsher than the definition suggests. You're right, it can have to, it sounds harsh, but the public assemblage permit also defines a nuisance as just occupying public space or denying the public the normal and customary use of that space. So if I'm standing in the park with a crowd, I'm denying your access to that space.
So put that in, so people don't have to look in another ordinance and make that leap,
We can add. a
so that people
definition.
understand that you don't have to,
Yep.
we require permits for this for
Yeah.
all kinds of things that are never a nuisance.
So would you just add the public nuisance definition into this,
Yeah,
Okay.
or substitute it instead of, which occupies, you know,
yeah,
the public space to the exclusion of others, instead
Yeah.
of calling it, or other nuisance, something like that. I would just, make it really clearer and simpler. It's just, and forgive me for,
I have a question.
Yep.
Are public buildings included in this?
Yeah.
For example, the library,
Yep.
inside the library, or
Yep.
the library has the oversight, not us?
No, I believe that parcel is owned by the town, unless I'm mistaken, so it would be
They have
town
a
property.
policy on display of
That's why I'm
art.
asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
speaking of religious things on public property, you know St. Stephen's is on public property. Just saying.
It's not.
Hopefully they don't put anything up.
So
Yeah.
that was brought up for me, like the wreaths that go on the lights during the holiday season, the lighted tree on the green across, those are related to Christmas, which is a religious holiday. Does that mean all of that stuff will need to go through this
A
process?
tree is not, a religious, a Christmas tree is not a religious symbol.
Without, so
The
although,
wreath definitely.
Well, that is
The wreath
debatable
definitely
because it is related to Christmas
Not
and
where
Christmas.
I go, it's not, it's not a religious symbol. I mean,
It's perceived as that.
that's
is
my
one very
opinion.
religious.
Yes, indeed.
But I bet you I am right.
So I think, so the point that I'm making is that I think that there should be more clarification because I think there's gonna be disagreement about what's a religious symbol.
so I'll paraphrase what the attorney said, which is he readily acknowledged this is vague. There's not one standard. You know, he talked about cases where this religious scene in a courthouse was upheld by this court and the next one was struck down because it was slightly different. There's no one definition of defining religion. I don't want to go pretend to try. But he did note that it's going to be difficult to get more specificity. You're not the first, people on the committee asked for the same thing.
Okay.
And I think it will be difficult to get him to push us further, or get us to push him further to give us more specificity.
Okay.
But
The
I
other thing that it brought up for me is, and I know these aren't religious symbols, but what about flags displayed on public property? Other than like the American flag? What if somebody wants to put up, does it cover this? They're not religious, but I think they might potentially fall in the same category if somebody wanted to put up some kind of flag that means something to their group or organization on public property.
Well, I think you're right. I don't think it falls under this draft policy. We hadn't discussed that, so I don't want to spitball an answer. It's possible
guess
it
I
could fall
wondered
under
if-
this public
if-
assemblage ordinance. but-
If it made sense to
Thinking of broadening.
broadening the, I wondered if it needed to get away more, I don't know. I
worry,
Just-
I had the
just-
same worry with David. I said, supposing somebody, wants to put up the swastika or something on or hate symbol. Do we have DEI principles that we could say, we're not gonna allow symbols that are commonly recognized as hate symbols? Or I don't know, part of me wants to do that, and then part of me says, I just don't even wanna, I'm just gonna continue to hope it never happens. Did it?
Anyway, just some thoughts.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Some thoughts I had in how,
I think your assemblage permit likely might cover some things like a flag display, but I think there's always the potential for something outside of a new situation could arise, that could be covered.
As far as the draft,
Yeah.
are we approved the draft, sorry, trial period or?
I guess it would depend when the next request comes in, right? It's sort of a policy on the books waiting for usage, right? If nobody knocks on our door and asks to put something up, it won't get used.
So it brings back that question, if next time those wreaths are gonna go up for Christmas, does BMP has to come and ask for
like a wreath as an assemblage?
Well, I will quote, there's a 1989 Supreme Court decision on Christmas trees, and they are not religious symbols, so I doubt if a wreath is is a symbol either.
But the perception in general public.
It's not a
is-
perception, there's a Supreme Court decision.
Among general public, I'm saying.
When we drafted or reviewed the displays in the library policy 3 years ago, we decided that the Christmas tree there was not a religious symbol as we revisited it as the library board director.
Have a hand up.
Okay, Judy?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead, Judy.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess, can I have clarification on what the original question was?
The original cause for the policy itself? Is that what you're asking?
I can't, okay, David, I can't hear you.
So I believe if you're asking where this issue came from, I think there was a communication to the town relating to the menorah that was in Triangle Park, if I'm remembering that correctly. I believe that spurred the initial communication to the town about how the town handles more religious symbols on public space. That was last fall, or in the winter.
Okay, all right, and so the board's position is that a Christmas tree is not a religious symbol?
I don't think the board has taken a position on that.
The Supreme Court has, that's kind of over us.
I'm sorry, Dan, can you say that again?
The Supreme Court has made the decision that a Christmas tree is not a religious symbol.
Well, of course they wouldn't. Of course they would make that decision. But
Surprising you had to go there.
Into the record, a Christmas tree is in fact a religious symbol. So I guess I don't understand what the issue is here.
That's an example, by the way, so.
Yeah, that's just an example that was being discussed, Judy. We're talking about, this is a policy review that we're going through. And if somebody wanted to argue with the town that Christmas trees are religious, then we would have to decide first whether they're religious or not. And then if we decide that we believe they're religious, we would have to follow this particular policy. So we're not deciding tonight whether Christmas trees are religious or not. We're looking at a policy for knowingly religious displays on public property.
Okay, and so the issue of putting up a menorah is coming under that particular discussion. There's no decision being made about that.
No,
Is that correct?
that's correct. That's what drove us to ask the policy committee to review and come up with a proposed policy, because somebody questioned that when there was a menorah on town property last year.
Got it. Okay.
Okay?
All right. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, back to the policy.
I'll just say, just to summarize, given how few we get of these, in the event we receive one, we could check with town council just to clarify if there's been any decisions in the past on that topic, a tree versus this versus that versus whatever. Beyond that, there's latitude for the manager's office to reject it if there's some non-substantive related issue, right? If it's proposing we're gonna block a street to do it, or if we're blocking a sidewalk, or if there's a safety component to it, something unrelated to the material thing being displayed, in which case we would offer an alternative location, public space. But, we don't get too many of these, but at least if we do, again, we are following something that's been reviewed by council, and we're not, we wouldn't be just
Winging it.
winging it, yeah.
Yep.
Just for comments about wings and prayers, I did consult with town council about the menorah
Yeah.
before approving that permit.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Dave, your big thought on including that?
Yeah, we can,
Definition?
yeah, that's easy enough to
In
do.
there,
Just put it in, if you want to make the motion with that language, and we'll
I
add it in.
move to approve and adopt the draft policy for the placement of religious symbols on town property, incorporating the definition of public nuisance from the public assemblage ordinance.
Second?
Seconded, comments or questions? Is this a first round pass?
Could be.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed? Okay, we have 6.
I would just say, I wouldn't link it to the public assemblage. I'd simply say, here's a Supreme Court decision, Christmas trees are okay. Here's the other opinion, menorahs are okay, other things require approval. I just, the whole assemblage thing is just too clumsy for me.
Okay.
To require this only when there's a public assembly.
Duly noted.
Alrighty.
Any other sign?
Not this time, I think
Did we ever address the public art?
that public art hasn't come to us. I think the last thing you gave us was the easement discussion about trying to craft something to guide you in future easements.
Okay.
So we're gonna dig into that for you.
What are your thoughts on public art?
We had requests for putting up art, but we haven't had any in a number of years, but
At least last 3-4 years.
we haven't had any, well, we used to have some,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah, during that bridge construction, we had on the buildings, what's his name? He brought that up. He wanted to draw murals.
Nice.
there's an artist, his name's John Cerny, who does large murals, and, he had hit me up about doing a mural, so they had one in Vermont. So I mean, we had a lot of comments when we had the art on loan out here in
Yeah.
the front,
The big elephant.
but, just curious. We'll move on.
Alrighty.
Okay. Kathleen, is that the next one, yours, or?
So, the proposed road names are not ready at this time, and there isn't any substantive update on the Stone Crop Development Agreement. Looking to bring up at this time.
So we're saying 22 minutes ahead of schedule, we move to the check warrant?
Yeah, I had check warrants. I like doing check warrants. I don't mind.
You can take
I
over.
would say I would appreciate,
Fantastic.
we breeze through that.
Right, Dan?
I would just say that I appreciate Kathleen sending me around. I don't know if you sent it to everybody.
Yeah.
The key to that colored document is, here's what the town is going to be responsible for in the Stonegate project. I think it's an important thing to include along with the phasing, that those 2 exhibits in the development agreement, and I hope we're not holding up anything with the Stone Crop project by this in any way, but,
No, I talked to Jen today, and she said that a stone crop and Summit are back before the DRB next Monday night, and we'll be working on some fine-tuning some language in the development agreement for your discussion on.
this coming Monday night.
Right.
Okay.
For the next board meeting.
have something, a question about stone crop. It was interesting, the article in the paper couple weeks ago that talked about stone crop possibly only having enough funds to do the first phase and the other phases might be delayed.
He was here with us,
And he
talked
didn't-
about the first two.
Yeah, he didn't say anything about any significant delays or financial issues or that the cost of construction has gone up, has doubled, and they're gonna be hard pressed to do any more building after the first 80 units.
Those were the ones he talked to us about, and then
Right.
they've been working on, yeah.
Right, I mean, they're well-funded in the first, but that's the first time I'd seen it, and I saw it in the paper, and I don't know what the source of it was. Just got my attention.
Yeah, I know that they're still working on the next phases, but when he was here, he was hoping that they would,
Right.
by the time, be ready to roll into the next one. Maybe it's not wanting to promise too much.
Yeah,
I don't know, I didn't read that article because he just,
yeah, I did, and I was surprised.
yeah, kind of runs different to what we thought.
Right.
Well, I hope the market can absorb it, and I hope the other financing can come together based on that. We can't control or influence that, but I think, we have to, what are the minimum things that we really feel are necessary, as part of the first phase? Like that sidewalk, for the school children living in there, they need a way to walk to
Right.
school.
Moving on to check warrants.
Yep. I move to
DRB's
approve.
got that, Fred.
I move to approve total expenditures in the amount of $424,202.75, consisting of $270,197.61 for accounts payable and $154,005.14 for payroll for the period of June 26, 2024 through July 9th, 2024.
Second.
You can have.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Concerns, Dan?
I had somebody come talk to me today, and I agree with this, is concerned about the lack of striping for crosswalks. That now we're in the busy season, and it's getting dangerous out there. And it also is when people come to the town, that's the first thing they see, and it just looks worn. And there's a safety concern. So I know I think some of that was delayed because of water issues and overwhelming of the public works, but do we have an idea if we're gonna be doing that?
Yep.
soon?
I'll pass that concern along to Bill and get you an update.
Okay, thank you. I also had a conversation with Doug Anderson and Debbie Anderson about their property, which is right on Middlebury River, and they lost 15 feet of it and everything. What they were raving about is the service that Emily has provided to them by going out and talking to them, and she actually arranged, they had to pay for their $17,000 on their own. Emily found a grant for them, and they also mentioned that Kathleen and Emily both went out to the houses, and they were just very happy with the way our town government and people have performed for them, so. And as a pet peeve, I wish we could do more mowing on the sides of the roads where, particularly now in the season of poison parsnip, and it's mostly along the roads, and if it gets cut down, at least sometimes once, if it gets cut down 2 years in a row, there will be no poison parsnip on the side of the road where it got cut down. So it can be controlled. It's a two-seasonal plant, and we can do something about it, and most people don't.
I find that really interesting because I have it on my property and I've cut it multiple times and it comes back in the same exact spot year after year after year.
Mine's gone, and my neighbor has this huge field, and it works for the state as an invasive species plant expert. She had it mowed last year, and there's no poison parsnip in it, and it was the greatest field of poison parsnip I've seen. And she says it was a miracle.
That's great. I have it,
I got
I have
them.
it along my driveway, and we mow it, and we mow it, and we mow it, and it comes back, and it comes back, and it comes back.
The mow it before it goes to seed.
We do. I mow it constantly.
I'll lend you a shovel.
Oh,
That works too.
He's not getting
As
off the
long as
tractor.
that shovel comes attached with some hands and feet, come right over.
I'm doing the wrong job when I have a shovel in my hand. Okay, that's all I have.
I'm thankful for all the volunteers for Festival on the Green. It's been going great. And fingers crossed, even though we'll have rain tomorrow, that I'm grateful for St. Stephen's for letting them move inside if need be.
Oh, they're gonna be inside.
Yeah. Yep.
Rod?
Yeah, I was going to talk to you about the rain tomorrow. First time in my life I'm afraid. Last year's rain, the damage it caused in the county. Tomorrow, 6 to 7 inches of rain. Middlebury is going to be the hardest hit, I think. One thing I was thinking about is Kevin Perizer brought us that concern about the underpass.
Mhm.
Maybe it's a chance for us to test it out tomorrow to see how that fares. I drove through that. I don't think it's that deep going from Marble Works to Seymour Street. Underpass is very, very
Deep.
yeah, the depression is much larger. So I want to see, we have an opportunity to test it out tomorrow. If you can drive by and see.
Okay.
Yep.
Heather?
I have some notes in my head that I'm gonna try to get down on paper for things that I would like us to, or my suggestions for what the board considers the next time, requests for easements on public land come up. And if it's all right with the board, I'll just send it to Kathleen as a starting place. 'Cause I think it would be helpful. Imagine, you know, who's gonna be on the board the next time it comes up. And, I think it would be helpful to have some guidelines on, you know, like, what you should consider. And, you know, for me, I'll put the notes in and I'll send it to Kathleen and she can skip right around, but.
Copy. I'm interested in that. I mean,
Well, I'll send it to Kathleen and then Kathleen can share it with the group. Anyway, that's all I'm thinking about.
Cool. Okay.
I just gotta get it out of my head on paper and onto paper.
Fred?
I skimmed this decision from the Vermont Environmental Court regarding the 53 North Pleasant Street.
What was it, regarding what?
The 53 North Pleasant Street denial. This concerns the Tinsley College housing. The administrative officer made a decision about it regarding their accessory building. This was upheld, their decision was upheld. I just want to compliment the planning office for writing a decision that was upheld so well. Anyway,
Win for the neighborhood.
yes. I think I'm gonna stop there. I was gonna say some other things, but I'm reserve that for another time.
Okay. Andy?
Yeah, I'm good.
I do believe we have a hand up out in the audience before we go to executive session.
Okay, Judy?
Steve here. One, the thing about poison parsnip is it needs to be mowed before it flowers.
Not so.
Heather, as you noticed, it will come back time and time again. And I've mentioned this to Bill Vernon, you've got to get out there and mow it before it flowers. I'm not sure how primary food farm. And I would hope that, you know, that news would get out there. The last thing is, I have noticed and will follow up on the use of, Roundup on public property. And will ask anybody and everybody where on town property Roundup is being used. Because it's, for numerous reasons, it's not okay. So, yeah, if you can help in any way to supply information about where Roundup is being used, that would be appreciated. It should not be used anywhere, especially on, school grounds, which I know is being used. Thanks.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you,
Judy.
And a clarification, Mr. Google says, parsnip, it's, best time to mow is after it has flowered, but before it has set seeds.
Okay. We're gonna do a scientific research.
No, just cut them down.
I'm
Others gonna keep mowing
I'm
it.
gonna keep mowing my parsnip and take a picture every time I mow it and show you every time that it keeps coming back. No, maybe it doesn't
Wait.
flower, but the plant and the leaves are still there. I am,
There's the
And
challenge.
then I will stop putting parsnip seeds over to your property every fall.
Oh, lower. Lower the deck.
Good John to dig it out.
Okay.
Yeah, go big. Rip it out with your hands.
We were 22 minutes ahead. We are currently 30 minutes behind. What's your, somebody want to lead us into executive session?
So personnel and contracts, please.
Ooh.
so does that mean if it's contracts, we have to have the second motion on here?
No, go ahead with
Okay.
it all.
I'll move to enter into executive session with the inclusion of town manager and assistant town manager related to employment and contracts as allowed under Title I, Section 313A13.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we don't need the second.
That is usually the second motion.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, first you do the premature disclosure.